What's going on, everyone? Welcome. This is Harrison with Precision Ingenuity, and today I am joined by Kyle at Kirsch Machine. Kyle, how we doing today?
Hey, I'm good, Harrison. How are you doing?
Man, I am doing good. So, this week AJ's a little busy this week, so we got you on as a guest. And why don't you start by kind of introducing yourself and giving us a little bit of a background?
Yeah, happy to be here. When AJ sent me a text and asked me to join the show, I was a little bit taken aback, and more I thought about it, I was like, "Hey, that seems like a pretty good time and a pretty good opportunity." So, I started to get really excited about talking and kind of sharing my story. So, I guess I'll just kind of start at the beginning. I grew up on a farm out in rural Oregon, down in the valley south of Portland. Our crops were grass seed primarily, as well as some filberts and hazelnuts. I grew up kind of working on the farm, working in the farm shop a lot. We had fabrication tools. We had an old lathe. Just enough to kind of play around with. I had no idea what I was doing, but just trying to make stuff happen, doing fabrication stuff and, lots of hands-on work. I know everybody's had that, most kids have had that experience where you make some beautiful creation out of insulation foam and then go to spray paint it and it just all melts apart in your hands.
Oh yeah.
Just lots of hands-on stuff out in the farm shop. So that kind of really piqued my interest to go into mechanical engineering. So that's what I did when I went to college. So I went and got educated for mechanical engineering. When I was in school, definitely still very hands-on focused. I really didn't know what manufacturing or machining really even was at that point. Like I said, I had played around with a lathe, but that's about it. And a lathe and drill press and Dremels. Really, the first kind of exposure to machining was in our SAE Baja. Joined the SAE Baja team in college,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of formula is what really gets a lot of press around SAE, but Baja is kind of similar to Formula. It's a racing program, but really based around off-road. And our team was very small. I went to a pretty small private college, and so we had to do a lot with a little. We had a very small team compared to some of our other schools. That
usually means you get some creative solutions, though. So
100%. Yeah, we had. Oh man, there was definitely some interesting times on the lathe at school. Making it happen, modifying gears and gearboxes and all the stuff. So that was kind of my first kind of exposure to actually manual machining and kind of making parts that I designed or that our team designed. And we really didn't have much for CNC equipment at our college. We had a couple like router type things, but really no actual CNC equipment. A lot of manual machines, a lot of woodworking gear, a lot of woodworking tools, but really nothing for CNC machining. So at this point, really, I still had no idea what CNC machines really actually were. Some of my hobbies in college were, paintball, modifying paintball guns, remote control airplanes and helicopters.
What paintball guns did you run?
I was really into Tippmann Model 98s, believe it or not.
Really?
Around that time. Yeah, it was around that time that the kind of a lot of the new electronic stuff. This was in the early 2000s. A lot of the early electronic triggers and things were coming out, ways to modify them. So I mean, there was late nights in my dorm room dremeling on Model 98 frames, fitting parts into them, and micro switches and soldering, and that was a good time for sure. Probably pissed off my dorm neighbors, but yeah, it's all right.
We had a lot of paintball growing up as well. We had a buddy of mine started a company to sell paintball equipment because there were so many of us that were into it, and my cousins had about 100 acres, and we'd go out there and we'd get, a group of 20 or 30 guys, and we did all kinds of games. I mean, it was a lot of fun.
It's
So
so much fun.
I,
I haven't
I
done it for
miss those
years,
days.
but I was putting some stuff away in the back of my shop here, and I found an old big box of paintball stuff. It's like, man, I got to get that out again and play with the kids.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'll never forget the first time I was introduced to paintball. It was my cousin and a good friend of mine, and we did a one-on-one. So it was 3 people, every man for himself. And we kind of formed like a triangle, and I'm sweating bullets, and they're both coming at me, and I can see both of them, but they can't see each other. And so I'm popping back and forth trying to hit them, and I get stuck at a tree, and they're both coming around, and I run out of air at that exact moment. And so I just take off booking it away from the field, and they both just light me up. And that was my introduction to paintball, was just running with my tail between my legs, getting lit up from both sides.
That sounds about right. That's hilarious. So with some of those hobbies, like specifically RC planes, a friend of mine really got into that and building them and modifying those. So we kind of strayed away from Baja team for our senior project and went to a competition called SAE Aero, which is basically where you build a RC airplane with a goal in that competition is to lift as much weight as you can. And there's specifications in terms of, envelope and engine size and, a lot of parameters that you have to build within. And then you've of course got to do all your engineering calculations and everything like that to prove that what's actually going to happen is going to happen. So
what year was that you did that?
That was in 2009.
2009. Okay, yeah. So you're ahead of me then by a decent margin, but I believe my university that I went to also did that exact same competition. And we had my senior year, they had a team that did it, and I unfortunately was not on it, but I just remember they crashed the plane the night before, and before the competition, they stayed up and they rebuilt the whole thing from the ground up in one night, and then left out the next day. And they didn't place first, but I think they were in the top 5. So
that's awesome. Yeah, we went to the competition in Atlanta, Georgia. So all the way across the country for us from Oregon. And we placed 4th, I think, out of around 30 or so teams in our division. So I was pretty happy about that. Again, we had a small team compared to the other groups. We had 3 people on our team. So we had, there was teams of 15, 20 people there. And so I was pretty happy with our performance for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely. Were you electric or gas?
Gas. Well, nitro
methane.
Yeah. I
Fair
think
enough.
it was a 0.6 or 60 size motor. I can't remember if that's 0.6 cc's or I can't remember what that is, but it's a 60 size motor. I believe that's right. Yeah. It was a 60 size motor, and that was fixed. Everybody had to use the same motor, same power plant, but
good deal.
So that's pretty much all through my college career. Then after I graduated college, I went to, I left college and went to a agricultural equipment manufacturer near my hometown. So I got in touch with this guy that was, he was building equipment, but he was building it all kind of made to order in California, because that's where most of the market was for his equipment. But it was he didn't have a facility. What he was trying to do was start up a build, basically an assembly plant for his, what they were was high-end sprayers for like pretty expensive sprayers for like high-end crops, like wine grapes, table grapes, fruits, like just very high-end crops, very, expensive part of agriculture. And so I joined up with another one of his employees that actually came up from California to Oregon to start up the shop, moved up here to Oregon, and we were a two man shop. So we were, figuring out plumbing and wiring and assembly and, designing brackets. And, we had some legacy stuff that we were working with, like tanks and frames that were already, kind of that were in production, not really in production, but they had been made before. So we had some prints, and we had, we didn't have a lot. I mean, we were in the kind of a corner of a warehouse, just doing some light fabrication, doing a lot of ordering of components, inventory. I mean, it was a two-man operation. So, we all did everything to make everything go around.
Did you guys have a CAD package that you designed this in, or were you just building off of like hand drawings?
So at that time we used Autodesk Inventor as our CAD package, because that's actually what I was most familiar with. My counterpart from California, he was really more of the hands-on type guy, and my specialty was more of the engineering design type work. Of course, we both did back and forth because of the small nature of the shop. So there was plenty of days. This was definitely not a CAD jockey type situation for me. I was crawling around on my hands and knees doing putting stuff together, and then also doing field service in our area as well.
But were you also doing some design as well? So it was like,
yeah,
okay, because like it's really beneficial to both design and then put your hands on everything you design. I feel like anyone who does CAD really needs to have exposure to making what they're designing. Like
100%. Yeah. And especially with like the assembly and the plumbing and routing. I mean, until you know how that kind of hose bends around that corner, you can really back yourself up into some corners that you can't get out of, or it's very difficult to, or you need additional fittings, or, servicing these again was a big focus of ours, just because we were doing the service. So if we made it hard to service, it was us who was cussing out ourselves, on the service side.
Yep.
But yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree with you more that, that kind of experience was really beneficial to me in both sides, in both the design and the manufacturing side.
Yeah.
I worked there for a few years. I left them to go to another company, Warren Industries. They were big into like winches and hubs, gears and drivetrain components, winches, bumpers, that kind of stuff. I actually started out there as a design engineer, and I worked as a design engineer for about a year until I found manufacturing engineering there. And that's really where my love of manufacturing and manufacturing engineering started, is at Warren. That place, I supported a product that goes into the Ford F-150, the wheel ends. That's what actually actuates the four-wheel drive on and off on the Ford F-150s. And we were selling those direct to Ford to tier one contracts.
Oh, that's super cool.
So our production schedules were, you didn't miss. You just didn't.
Yeah.
Missing was not an option. And that meant, if you did have a miss, you've got to figure out how to correct for that, how to make up the time, and how to never have that happen again, very, very quickly, very under the gun.
Did you, did they stock extra inventory? Did they have enough inventory on hand to be like, if something goes wrong, we can handle like a 1 week delay with figuring out the problem? Like, or was it pretty much when it came off the machine, it was ready to ship out the door and you were going to ship it out the door?
Yeah, we had some inventory. I want to say it was just a couple of days. It was not a significant amount by any means. And the nature of Ford is they've got so many parts, they don't really stock any inventory either. So really I remember one time specifically where we had a revision change, and it caused an unforeseen issue. Something that was unexpected came up, and it actually caused an NVH failure at Ford, which is a noise, vibration, or harshness. So they call it NVH, and that's not something you want to have happen, because, if you're buying a brand new pickup truck, you don't want this thing grinding and making noises as you're driving off the lot. Absolutely. That was we stayed there, not quite 24/7, but it was, we had daily meetings on Saturday and Sunday and, every day of the week to correct that issue. We had inspections going on at the Ford factory. We had new certified inventory going to them, air freight, which was, very much not inexpensive. But that's just what you have to do to keep that customer rolling. You cannot shut them down, period.
So when you have a revision like that, is it as simple as rolling back like to an older version, or like who's driving the creation of a new revision? Is it you guys or is it Ford? And then if a problem like that comes up, can you just back off the revision to keep them going and then figure out what's wrong and then switch back over again?
In some cases, yes. In this case, we could not. So Warren is pretty unique that they are the design owners of what they're producing.
Okay.
And so they had a full design engineering department that was doing all this design for these components. And then we had a couple of people that worked very closely directly with Ford to integrate it, into the actual vehicles. But I think this is pretty unique to Warren, where they owned the design. And so in this case, no, we could not just roll it back because there was changes to the assembly equipment. There was changes to components. There was just, we couldn't roll it back. It was cheaper, or
Gotcha.
it was faster to move forward to, develop. Basically what we did was we developed an inspection technique to find the issue. And that's something that I actually developed, I think that was on Friday at 6:00 at night, and we had, parts being made the next morning, both at our plant and at at Ford's plant, to have that inspection start first thing Saturday morning.
Oh, wow.
It was a wild time. It was a stressful, wild time.
So were they the first company that introduced you to CNC machines? Was that the first time you kind of got experience with the CNC?
Yes, it was. So Warren's kind of product lines was a lot of high volume type stuff. Even their winches were pretty high volume. So a lot of the CNC machines that we had there were, they would make one part and that's it, and that's all they would ever make. I mean, so not really like I'm doing right now with like my kind of job shoppy type stuff, or some of my parts later on in my career. But definitely, I mean, that was the first time that I'd ever seen, an automation cell or a CNC machine do a tool change, or, I mean, that was the first time I've really ever been exposed to actually CNCs in production.
Were you programming them or just working around them? Or like, how much contact did you have with the CNC machines? Was it just, now I know they exist, now I know this thing is here, or I got to put my hands on it, play with it, learn how to use it? Like, what was it at this stage?
I really didn't get much play time with the CNCs at Warren, really any at all. We had, again, with the automotive type work, you've got process controls, and you can't just change a CNC program. That's not the way it works. Once you're up and running in production, you're pretty much set in stone. I mean, you can make changes, but it's a long, difficult road to make that change. So most of my involvement was kind of working with our tool and die shop. And again, no real hands-on from my side, but I'll tell you, there was a lot of tense arguments between me and the tool and die guys around, because I'm designing stuff to have them make. And this is really the first kind of, CNC, of course I've made a ton of stuff that I fabricated myself, but the first time I'm making, gauges and things to support our assembly and CNC machining side. And, this was really the times. I mean, I cherish those conversations with those guys in that tool and die shop. I still think back to them today of, how are we going to do this? How are we going to hold this? How are we going to inspect it? How do you expect me to hold 2/10 on this ring that's going to spring right as I cut it off from the bar? It's just those kinds of things. And then, yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of learning about how to do that. And I mean, I was kind of the guy that, I mean, I still am. I'm, really, I see myself as kind of humble and hungry, so I want to learn those things and I'm willing to learn them. And I'm not going to ever tell you that I'm the foremost and expert of knowledge in these things. There's always, especially in manufacturing, it's such a deep pool. There's always things to be learned. And I mean, there's no way that I know it all at this point. But I've always kind of had that mentality of, these guys I need to listen to these guys, because if they're giving me feedback, they're not just doing that to be jerks. They, there's a reason, and I need to figure that out to make their lives better, get my parts faster, and make them more accurate and better, and everything.
All right. Well, what was the next step after that? So you kind of got your first taste of machining, and then where'd you go from there?
Yeah. So after that, I left Warren and I went to Benchmade Knife Company, who's a pretty high end knife manufacturer here in Oregon. And I went and I started there as a manufacturing engineer. With my focus was really on grinding and the CNC machining. So again, they had lots of CNCs, lots of Haas machines, robo drills, and the grinding equipment to grind the bevels and the surface grinding of the blades, really, high tolerance type stuff. So I started out manufacturing engineering, supporting the CNC machining and grinding areas. And, there again, I just really kind of got into the even more exposure into the CNCs. At this point I was able to do some programming there because we were making our own product. If we had adjustments to tool paths, to make it better or faster or change tooling, we had carte blanche ability to do that. So I did get some exposure to Mastercam and Gibbs Cam there. Their attention to detail in that place is incredible. I mean, the small witness lines from blends, from the end of the end mill wearing out to little, I mean, I say chatter, but in their mind it's any little blip or anything is chatter. It's just the bar that they have there is so high that I really learned a lot of my attention to detail when I was at Benchmade Knife Company. We're really looking into the tool paths in depth, and every little linking move, and is that brushing the material? Is there 10 thousandths more raw stock there than next to it? Is that giving slightly more tool pressure on the finish pass? I mean, it is incredible the amount of attention to detail that they have for their product. And that just, you have to have a very microscope view of the tool paths of the grinding process, the grinding wheels, everything. It just is so minutely important because their finish expectations, their dimensional expectations are so high.
So how much hand finishing do they have off the machines? Like, is it like a human should not have to touch or modify this at all? Or is there a little bit of a hand touch on some of these?
There is some hand touch on, well, all their sharpening is still done by hand. So all the, the blade edge, definitely didn't get as much scrutiny because, they're all going to be touched up by hand. All the blade reveals are going to be done by hand. The actual geometry, like and the mechanism portion, there's really no handwork that's done. I mean, there is some adjustability that's built into some of the assemblies. But really there's some parts that you just have to hit within a couple tenths, period.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is.
That's cool. That would be a very cool environment to witness and to be a part of. I wouldn't mind being a fly on a wall in a shop like that.
Yeah, it was a pretty neat experience. So I was a manufacturing there for a few years, and then I actually moved into management at Benchmade Knife Company, where I managed their tool and die shop. So I had 4 people that reported to me. That was we made our own tools for stamping dies that we did in house, as well as we contracted some of that stamping out as well. But we provided the tools to that for those to be made. So again, we, very high tolerance, wire EDM, surface grinding, CNC machining. We did a lot of the prototyping of new parts through that shop. Fixturing for assembly, fixturing for the actual CNC machining of the parts. I mean, a lot of the different manufacturing support operations went through that shop. And there again, I learned a lot about capital equipment purchases, buying equipment. We had some machine upgrades. We bought a new wire EDM, a couple new surface grinders. I made some mistakes and, had to figure out how to alleviate those after the machines hit the shop floor, and, layouts and, it's just, there was a lot of learning about, how to kind of set up a shop in that time as my tool and die shop manager there at Benchmade.
That's cool. That's really cool. Do they make almost everything in house, or do they outsource some of the stuff like their handle grips or anything like that?
The majority is made in house. They do outsource some. They drew the line that said basically blades. Like that's what makes a knife. They're not going to outsource anything on a blade, period. So if they were outsourcing something, it would be like handles or turned components, screw machine type parts, pivots, those kinds of things.
Do they try to use off the shelf screws, or do they try to have a supplier make them, or do they make them in house?
They are a lot of supplied screws. They do have some off the shelf, but a lot of them are very fine pitch and very specific dimensions, length. Because if you have a screw that's sticking 20 thousandths inside the knife, for most things that's not going to matter, but for a knife it visually matters, and that's just not acceptable. Nice.
That's cool.
So when I was at Benchmade, that's when my home machine shop kind of started growing. So about 2018, I moved from a small city, from a small town, out into the country. I bought 9 acres with my wife and a couple of kids at that point. I've got 3 kids now. On that property, we had a couple outbuildings. One was about 1,000 square foot finished shop that was in the front of a barn, and that's where my shop is now. And the big benefit is I had 3-phase power on my property, which I was very happy about.
That is awesome.
So when I moved out here, I bought a Bridgeport. Actually, my first CNC machine I had in my garage of my old house in town, and it was a converted Harbor Freight mini mill, CNC mini mill. It had, I think, 8 inches in X travel and a 3.5 inches in Y. Oh, so man, pretty monster machine.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
That was a fun project to get going, and I brought that out here. Really, I didn't really ever use that I've used it for a couple projects, but man, it just, that the Y-axis was so limiting. I really had nothing I could actually build with it. So,
well, I mean, if you're working at Benchmade, you don't really need a whole lot of Y travel to make a knife. So
I guess that's true.
Now, was this something that you bought as a kit and made and assembled yourself, or did you buy it pre-built?
I actually bought it pre-built from a guy off of Craigslist, and so it was he had done kind of the majority of the work of the assembly and programming. There were some kind of dial in things that I had to get dialed in. But for the most part, it was a working-ish project at that point. And I just kind of tuned it up, made some modifications that he had chose not to make that I wanted to make, and kind of ran it to make some stuff. But honestly, I didn't use it a lot to be honest.
It was just enough to know that you had caught the bug and were ready for something else.
100%. Yep. 100%. So I moved that out here, my CNC mill, and I bought a Bridgeport, put that in the corner, wired it up. And again, with the kind of the manual nature, I, did some stuff, but, really kind of my work for hire stuff didn't really take off until I got the CNC mill, the VF2 that's behind me right here. So I actually bought that from Benchmade when I was an employee there. That mill was out of our tool and die shop, out of my shop that I managed, and we were upgrading, basically getting rid of all the old controls in the shop. So they had machines that were coming out of production that were in better shape, newer control. So they swapped out this machine with a newer model, and this one was getting sold off, essentially for scrap. It was a working machine at that point, but they had gotten their depreciation out of it. They had a purchase offer from a machine buyer, and the maintenance manager came to me and said, "Hey, we've got this offer. Do you want to match it?" And I said, "Absolutely, I do." And so I bought the machine and, paid the riggers to bring it down to my barn and, put it there in the corner of the shop where it sits today.
Was it a machine that had been a production machine at one point and then moved to prototyping?
Yes, it had. It was a production machine, Benchmade. So it's got a fair amount of hours on it. I think.
That was going to be my next question: is how many hours or tool changes has it done?
I'm not sure about the tool changes. I think the hours is around 11,000.
Okay.
Which
what year is it? You said it was
2004.
That's honestly not as bad as I thought it would be. I thought it'd be more.
Yeah, it's a 2004 machine, a 2004 VF2 SS. It was in production. I'm not sure how many years, but it was in production for several years. And then it got moved over to the tool and die shop where it was, mostly, it was living an easy life at that point, making prototypes and, fixtures and that kind of stuff.
Is it still a pretty tight machine, or does it have, some problems here and there?
No, the only problems that I've had with it are some of the, things around, some of the like plumbing, like for like oil lines and, some of the oil pump on the back. And I've got a couple coolant leaks that come here and there. Really, I've not had to do much in terms of maintenance. I had to fix the programmable coolant. But for the most part, it's a really great machine, really good condition. Tool changer works great. No issues on any of that stuff. It's got a 12,000 RPM spindle, Cat 40 side mount tool changer with 25 tool spots.
That was a high end machine back in 2004.
For sure. Yeah.
That's nice. Good deal. Well, what was the next step?
So next step, when I left Benchmade, I went to a really large corporate job shop. So this was a big step up in my career. I basically was responsible for all of engineering, all of CNC programming, and all of estimating at about a 150 person shop. So a pretty large machine shop. We had about 60 CNC machines, venture capitalist backed, corporate owned, corporate system machine shop. Throughout my several years there, my my title didn't really grow, but my responsibilities grew and grew. I ended up taking, by the end, I was managing 2 sites, engineering, estimating, CNC programming. And for a small portion, I was kind of interim quality manager as well, while we searched for the right person to fill a role. I had about my peak, I had about 50 people reporting to me through an org structure. And
Oh, wow.
that shop it was a great learning experience. I'll put it that way. I mean, we had, big customers, we were AS9100 certified. So, we were in high tech, we were aerospace, defense, lots of requirements for documentation, for traceability, for ERP, for, all the things that make these big customers happy and make them, kind of pay the big bucks for the work that you're doing, but along with that came, a lot of pressure, a lot of stress, a lot of hours. And, ultimately it just got to be too much for me personally. It was literally affecting my health at points where
Yeah.
man, it was just too much.
What was it like transitioning? Because it sounds like, the majority of your career up to that point had been higher volume type work, Benchmade and Ford. That's a lot of like the same part over and over again. What were the volumes of parts you were dealing with at this other place? Were they, onesie twosie? Was it, runs of 100? Like, what was that transition like?
Yeah, that's a great question. It was a lot different. The quantities were very low compared to anything really I'd worked with before. I mean, we would do jobs of, 10 to 20 pieces at times, or even 2 pieces. We would do very low quantity work. And the variation that we had, we had thousands and thousands of part numbers in our ERP, like literally thousands. So like we had a lot of variation in that part. It was to the point where we still just relied a lot on skilled labor. We did not have the resources or kind of the time to really get everything to be designed, process flowed perfection. You just couldn't do it in the time. So, we gave our best to evaluate the risks on the front end, as soon as we can. And then at that point, it was basically a race to make the parts, to learn the issues that we're going to face and to correct them, before we run up on the time of our promised lead time to the customer.
Were your lead times pretty quick, like a couple days or a couple weeks or a month or two? Like, what were your typical lead times?
Typical was about 6 to 8 weeks, I would say typically. But we also had we did do expedite work where we would deliver parts within 1 to 2 to 4 days, depending on the part. But we would stock quite a bit of material just for those expedite parts. And we had a totally different cell in the manufacturing floor that would run those expedite parts. We had dedicated equipment and dedicated personnel just to expedites specifically.
Okay. Now, this is a question that I'll kind of loop back into some of your other places you worked. What would you say, at the 3 different locations we've talked about so far? What was the biggest thing you learned at each location that you can apply today to your current? Like, was there some takeaway from each location that you can apply to your personal shop?
Absolutely. I'd say every single one has there's a reflection of every single shop I've worked in my shop. And I think you could probably say that about most machine shops. I mean, it tends to kind of mirror the processes that you've seen in industry is kind of how I perceive a lot of these people that build their own home shops. I mean, I probably wouldn't have a 2x72 belt grinder if I didn't work at Benchmade. I've got a surface grinder again from primarily from surface grinding experience at Benchmade. I would say probably the equipment purchases are probably mostly influenced for myself from Benchmade and from the corporate machine shop. The processes definitely between Warren and my corporate machine shop, processes, quality process. Now I definitely do not have all my processes dialed in. I've definitely got some room to grow in that arena. But I would say my kind of basis for what I do today, a lot of is based on, what I've learned at Warren Industries as well as at the corporate job shop.
Now, you mentioned that your corporate job shop, you started programming some, or that was one of the hats you wore. At that point, is that where you, like, did you didn't have a lot of exposure to programming before that? So did you kind of come into that job and kind of, that's where, was it on the job learning? Like, hey, we don't have anyone that can program these parts, or was like, how did you progress in your programming knowledge for
so most of it, I really wasn't doing much of the programming myself, actually, for that corporate shop.
Okay.
I had employees that were doing that programming. My role in that was, really kind of resource allocation,
Gotcha.
making sure that they're prioritized correctly, working on the right mix of new product, and improving what our current processes were. Making a case for obviously more resources. It's always a manager's job to ask for more people. So most of my kind of programming learning was really done, on my own time through YouTube, just hands-on trial and error.
Yep. Fair enough. Well, was the corporate the last one before you started your own, or is there another one or two in there?
No, that's it. So I left the corporate shop last September and moved into my own machine shop full time at that point. So I've covered a couple of the equipment purchases, but really I've got a lot more equipment now than what I've covered so far. So when I was at the corporate shop, my home shop kind of continued to evolve. So I bought a Haas HL2, which is a 2-axis CNC lathe. It's a 1997 model. And from what I can gather, I mean, this lathe weighs about 9,000 pounds. So it's a pretty big machine, or pretty big weight for its size. What I've read about Haas CNC lathes is the later and later models you get, the weaker and weaker and less rigidity and less rigidity. So, I mean, I feel really good about this lathe that I've got. I put it through, made quite a bit of parts, and, I've held tents, I mean, everybody says tents all day. I don't know about that, but I've definitely, held tents on this machine, and, made a lot of good parts off of it, and used a bar puller for some automation, and when that makes sense. And, it's just been a great addition to the shop. I've got a Chevalier knee mill. I got rid of that old clapped out Bridgeport that I originally bought. I've got a Chevalier knee mill that's really tight, great machine. It's got 3-axis DRO and a DRO on the quill as well, so I can kind of track depths really accurately. I've got a Taiwanese 18 by 80 manual lathe. So that's been a great machine. I've got put a DRO on it this winter, actually, over kind of my Christmas break, and that's been a huge upgrade. I've got a couple lasers. I've got a CO2 laser, gantry bed style, and then I've got a fiber laser, galvo style for like metal part marking. And I've also got a Keyence touch CMM. It's called XM12000. It's basically it's a kind of a camera tracking system that has handheld probes. You have to do all the probing by hand, so that's the only kind of downside of it. You can't do any automated like CNC type probing. But it is subject to some human error, I found. But there's some tricks that I've gotten some pretty consistent inspection results with it. And some of my customers now are requiring CMM reports and full fairs and inspections, and so that's been a big benefit to be able to do surface profiles and flatness and perpendicularities and those kind of GD&T type call outs that are difficult to measure just on a height gauge with an indicator. So go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask, I mean, when you quit your job, like, did you already have some customers at that point, or did you just kind of like build up a customer base as soon as you left? Like, what was the transition like?
Yeah, so I was really intentional about the transition. Actually, I was I could see that from conversation with my wife that I wasn't really going to last at this corporate shop. My values, whatever it was, the stress was too much. My values weren't aligning with leadership. I was kind of stuck in the middle a lot of times. It wasn't going to work out for the long term. So I knew that fairly quickly. And when I bought all this equipment, my intention when I bought it was not to go full time. Really, my intention was to kind of build a capable shop that I could use to teach my kids or benefit the community or those kinds of things. But it kind of turned into, hey, I've got all this equipment. I've got some opportunity here. There's definitely money that can be made on these machines, in a full-time type fashion. So what I did to be for the intentional about the transition was, I did take on some customers that I was running. Again, I had to be very careful because I had, I could not compete with my day job. I had to do everything above board. I was not going to make ethical violations or, anything like that. So I tapped into my network. I got some customers. I also, tapped into Zometry. Zometry was huge for me for the transition. The biggest thing that I found about, Zometry with the transition time period was I could, do it and communicate with them on off hours. I was not beholden to talking with a buyer at their 8 to 5, because that's when I was working too. I couldn't talk to them from their 8 to 5. So a lot of the work that I did to kind of fund or fuel the transition was through Zometry. And I went I got Zometry Premium, I think in February of 2025, about a year ago. And really that step up was I found that to be pretty significant of a step up from kind of the entry level tier of Zometry to the premium level. And I was able to, do quite a bit of work with them, just in nights and weekends, and, stuff in my shop. So, the customers that I did pick up, were, I tapped into my network and, talked to some people, and they were, people who kind of knew what I was doing and were okay with me working, in the evenings, and, know that I would communicate with them, outside of normal hours. So, it's not, that's definitely not something that you're always going to find. And, but that's kind of how I went about it. Was I took on a few customers, and then I really just dug into Zometry, heavily. And
how did you inform your corporate company about this transition? Like, how did that conversation go?
It really didn't.
Oh, okay.
Until I quit.
Gotcha.
I was doing, communication wise with them, there was essentially none. There was some people at my job who knew, some of my colleagues and kind of, acquaintances, friends, people I still talk to today. But really it was not a widespread. When I got the job there at that company, I actually had my side business on my resume.
Oh, okay.
So it was not a total unknown that I was, kind of doing my own thing. But it
Mm-hmm.
was definitely not under the pretense that this was a transition out over, several months or a year type of situation.
Gotcha.
I did give them ample notice when I quit. I did not give them a 2 weeks notice. We had a long transition period when I did put in my notice. So I feel
Mm-hmm.
like I treated them very fairly. Um, and like I said, I was doing work on nights and weekends, and I had a lot of late nights at my day job. It was not, I didn't, I wasn't leaving early to go run my own machine shop. I was still trying to do my job there with as much tact and as much ethically as I could.
Did is did you leave on a good enough relation that they would call you up and say, "Hey, we're behind. Can you run some parts for us? Some overflow work?"
I, I would bet so. But I'm not certain of that. I mean, I know when I did leave, the president of our division did get in touch with me on LinkedIn and asked kind of about my capabilities, with the premise of sending me some overflow work if they had it. Um, but yeah, their work seems to be, really, kind of feast or famine. And so, when they get into those times, it's really quick lead times needed. And, really high pressure. And, I'm not sure if I really want to entertain that, to be honest.
Oh, no, that's fine. Um, leaving a business to start your own, it seems like it goes one of two ways. It either goes really well or really poorly. So, um, not much middle ground there
Yeah.
in people's stories. Sometimes it's like, oh man, me and the owner, we're great buddies, and he was the one that helped me get going. And other times it's like, if I show up on there, I gotta bring a vest because I might get shot at.
Yeah. I wouldn't say it's to that level, but, I mean,
Mm,
there's several people that I'm still in touch with today that work there, and we have a good working relationship. I
yeah.
Yeah, we'll leave it at that.
Well, that's good. That's good that you still have a good relationship like that. I still have a good relationship with the owner at the place I left to start my business, and I've talked to them about trying to get work in the past, and I've gone on their premises several times, and I've even bought I've even had them laser cut stuff for me in the past. But there's definitely a unique tension with an old employer, just dealing with them on a business level. So
Yeah, for sure.
so
Yeah, so that pretty much brings me to kind of present day. I mean, I've been working in my shop full time here since September of last year, and um,
you still pretty
yeah, it's
heavy into
just
Zometry?
actually not as much. I've seen that tail off as I went full time and kind of able to court some of the other real customers, people that I've been customers of mine that I've been developing, and I think I've taken a few Zometry jobs this year, but they've been, repeat work or very simple, laser cutting jobs or something like that. Just nothing significant from Zometry, really since I've gone full time.
So Zometry was just more of that transition that gave you the confidence to quit rather than something that you now do you find that that is because you like dealing with customers directly, or that there's better opportunity or value in dealing with people directly, or is there just headaches with Zometry? I'm just curious about your perspective on Zometry uh, versus dealing with customers directly, because I've had that same transition where I started on Zometry, and now I haven't taken a Zometry job in probably close to a year. So
Yeah, so I don't have anything against Zometry. I thought the kind of the system and the ecosystem that they have there, especially when I was part time. I mean, it really worked well for me. Able to browse the job boards. When I had free time, and have kind of the pick of things that could push my boundaries or had features that I want to make, materials that I had never used before. I mean, it's really, I think that's what really gave me this kind of on the job, accelerated learning that I really needed to be able to look at something and have confidence that I could make it, as well as the lead times. I mean, as you know, lead times on Zometry are blazing fast. You have to be fast. You have to be efficient. You have to set up your programming. You have to, you have to. You cannot be successful if you're taking 3 or 4 days to program a part and then ordering tooling. You can't do that. It's not an option. So I think that Zometry was really good for my learning and for my situation, kind of utilizing them in the kind of off time in the evenings and weekends. I would say now the thing that's kind of driving me to not really, I look at Zometry more as overflow at this point. Like if I getting low on work, then I'll go look at Zometry. But right now, like I've got more work than I can handle through, through Subtract, through direct customers, and it's more profitable work with typically longer lead times and more kind of comfortable work. And so I'd just rather take that than, kind of put myself through the ringer of, having to ship a part in, 3 or 4 days when I don't need to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. That's kind of how I've been. Like Zometry it wasn't bad, but it wasn't, amazing. And then once you start developing your own customers, it's just better margins, better timelines. And I personally like being able to talk to my customer.
For sure. 100%.
Directly. So,
yep. And in manufacturing, issues come up, right? That's a thing. It just happens. I mean, it's happened everywhere I've been. The ability to talk directly to the customer is absolutely it's gold. Yeah.
Yeah. The best thing is when you're on Zometry and a part ships out next day and you have a question and it's a 4-day lead time to play telephone around the world to get your answer. And then you're behind and then you're like, hey, can I get an extension? Cause you're not getting me answers.
And then you really never really know if they're actually asking the question or not to the customer.
Yeah, exactly. And then you're like, did you talk to the customer? Did you look at the timeline and go, we need to get these parts out? Just give them an answer. Like, what's going on?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So I think we've ordered parts. I mean, at my old job, I ordered parts on Zometry, and even today, there's been 1 or 2 times where I've outsourced a part just to Zometry that was like, I didn't want to take it, and my customer didn't have anyone else that wanted to take it, and I've used out Zometry once or twice, very rarely, but
you've used them to sub out a part.
Yep.
Okay.
I have. Yeah, I've subbed out a part or 2 to Zometry. It's 1 or 2 a year, and it's usually something that I can't find anyone local that'll do it. It's usually EDM stuff, something that needs to be EDM done. EDM basically type work, and
gotcha.
The just dealing with them, the quality is all over the place, and I hate outsourcing. And then my margins are basically nothing. And then you got to slap, it's my reputation on the line if something goes sideways. And it's just, I hate it. I absolutely hate it. It's like a necessary evil where I got a customer and there's been times where I've told them listen, just outsource it to this place. I've done that a couple times just cause I don't want to do the work, but they don't always do that. And sometimes they still want to send it to me and it's fine, I'll do it.
Perfect.
So, but, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, well, see here. We've gotten a pretty good history of kind of your story today. So what's kind of going on in your world this week then? Let's kind of narrow the scope to stuff going on this week? What are some of the struggles and challenges that you're dealing with today?
Oh man, it was a Monday today. Man, I had some saw issues, so I've got a CNC saw project that I'm working actually with Jacob. He's given me a hand with some of the programming and kind of controls work. But I've got an old Kosen auto saw that I bought that needs some work, and so we're kind of putting it back together and making it some improvements and turning it into kind of a CNC saw project. In the meantime, I've got kind of one of the larger Harbor Freight saws that I use to saw up all my material, and that vise was not wanting to cooperate today. It was just slipping, and I don't know if I just need to clean it or what, but I had parts to make, and so I went and got the old auto saw fired up and put back together enough that I could use it in a manual operation mode. And man, I had a hydraulic leaks and had to go get hoses and fix that. And I mean, it was a day of running around like crazy with my head, with my hair on fire, just to try to get some parts made today so they could ship out. But today was wild in terms of, a little bit wider back on, or a little bit further back on kind of the week. I'm working through a huge project that I got a bunch of different prototype parts for a customer. So, I'm right now, we're kind of making our own ERP whiteboard type sticky notes, trying to track progress, and there's outsources, and there's some, these are, fairs and inspection reports and material certs and, all the quality requirements and tracking all that. And, I mean, we're kind of, building the plane as we fly towards the ground, so to speak. But so far it's, I'm getting parts machined, getting them out to the outsources, and I feel like we're on track. So like, I can't argue with that. Right.
Now, you're a solo guy in your shop, right? You don't have any help, or does your family help?
It's just me. My wife has been a big help on some of the administrative type work and keeping kind of the jobs on track. And we actually have that whiteboard in our dining room right now, set up in the house, so we can kind of keep things on tab on that. And then my son comes out here. My son is 10 years old, so he comes out and deburrs parts, or kind of hangs out in the shop every now and then. But for the most part, yeah, it's just me.
And how many machines did you have in total? Was it just the Haas mill and lathe? Is that the only two machines?
Yeah, CNC? That's the only CNCs. That's the only CNCs. Gotcha. Yep.
Fair enough. Well, cool.
How about you? How's your week looking?
I'm getting left this week. So, like, my wife is going on a mission trip with the school she teaches at. So she's going to be out of country for a week and a half, 2 weeks. Weston is going on a ski trip, so he's going to be gone for a week. My parents are also going on a trip for about a week. And then Weston's parents are also leaving on a trip. So it's quite literally everyone's gone except for me and Ben. We're the only two that are here. So it's going to be interesting. But kind of the thing that kind of threw a wrench in all of this is that we just got approval. We were bidding a job, which is going to be so last year we did a little over 30,000 parts in a year. And I was bidding a job that was going to be 35,000 parts per year. Wow. And it was supposed to start in June. And so all of our planning and everything was for it starting in June. And then last week on Monday, they basically said, "How soon can you get going?" And part of my plan for taking on that work was to potentially get another machine, and that does not work if I need to start the work tomorrow. So, um,
Yikes! Wow.
so it's kind of turned into a lot, and so my stress levels and excitement have both risen at the same time.
Oh
so
man.
so needless to say, I don't think my robot is going to stop for a long time. Because
Are those parts for like 5-axis, or what's the new machine that you'd be buying?
so the machine I was looking at was a Datron. So there's two different parts. Um, one's 20,000 and the other is 15,000 a year. And one of the parts, the 20,000 piece, it's a small part that's basically it's almost like a laser cut part, but there's a little shelf on it, and so it's like a perfect Datron part. I could load up a sheet of material that takes up the whole work area and fit probably close to 400 pieces on it. Um, and so my
Nice.
plan was to potentially get a Datron and throw a sheet on there because they're thin and they're flat. Um, and then I could meet my production needs with that, and I don't have a lot of space in my shop, so it's about the only machine I could fit in. And then the other part, in short term, I could put it on the UR system. Long term, I'd probably like to try to get it on the SVM, the Doosan SVM with the fourth axis. It doesn't need to be a 5-axis part; it can be done with fourth axis. So I'd like to potentially do that with maybe like gimbal automation. And so with this job, I could potentially have two more machines running round the clock. So that'd be nice. High production job, looking at potentially a Datron. Um, but because we have to go so quick on this one, I'm probably going to have to use basically all of my machines to try to meet demand from the beginning. And but the exciting thing um, is that potentially I can move these parts to a night shift on the SVM and maybe the VF if needed until a Datron shows up. If we end up needing to get the Datron, um, but it's going to be a lot of work. But I'm really looking forward to it, and I'm hoping that our Magwell production we were doing has dropped down. The demand for it has, and I think it was because the first year new product they were building up inventory and they're not selling as many, and so the robot or the UMC hasn't been as busy on that. And so having a picking up another high volume or even higher volume part job will be really nice to kind of offset that slow down on the magwells. So
Nice.
looking forward to that. But we've agreed to a really fast timeline that's going to stretch us, and then Weston leaves. So so I got to tackle the first half of this on my own with just me and Ben. So
Sounds like
fun,
fun.
but it's also exciting because this one, if we have a goal for this year, and if we mirrored what we did last year and just included this new job, that puts us at meeting our stretch financial goal for this year. So like we have like a minimum we want to hit, and then we have like our stretch goal. And this one job, if everything else stayed the same, like if we made the same amount that we did this year, and this was the only increase, we would hit our stretch goal.
That's awesome.
So that's exciting.
That's huge.
That's super exciting. Yeah. So um, we'll see. I mean, there's a lot of assuming in that one sentence, assuming that like everything else goes the same, other job wise. I could have other customers that all drop off, and so this doesn't end up pushing me as high as I hope it does, but because I've had that happen. In fact, when we first moved into our new building, we had basically one main customer, and we made the move because that main customer was swamping us. And then as soon as we moved into the new building, the work from them just died. and it was kind of stressful back then. But
I'll bet, especially with new building, and
yeah,
yeah,
new
that could put some
building, new
pressure on.
machine. Yeah, the volume that they were, because they had us, like, they had a meeting with us, 3 to 6 months before that we moved into the new building with the new machine, and they said, "Hey, you're doing X amount of revenue per year. We want to double or triple that because you're kind of at the bottom tier for like vendors we outsource parts to, and we'd like to, double or triple your annual volume." And we're like, okay, so we go and we buy a building and we get a machine, and then they're just dead. And they were so dead that there was a different company that had been working with them for, I don't know, 5 or 10 years. They ended up closing down, and like they were a shop with like 40 machines, or no, not 40. I think it was 20 machines, roughly 20 machines, and they ended up closing down because of how slow they got.
Wow, that's too
So
bad.
yeah, but they've been getting busier here recently, and like last year they were pretty much dead as well. And so, but towards the end of last year, the last 3 to 4 months, they started really picking up, and they've kind of been up ever since. It seems like a lot higher than they have been the last 2 years. So that's exciting
Nice.
to look forward to as well. Um, but yeah, other than that, the robot has been going strong, and I absolutely love that thing. We've been averaging between 80 and 100 hours. We haven't quite hit 100 hours. That's my goal, is to hit 100 hours. But every week something comes up that we have to shut the robot off for a little bit. That's like 100% not the robot's fault. Um, it's like, we need to do a little maintenance on the Haas. Like we had a 1 week we had the Haas tech had to come in because we've had a oil axis error that keeps coming up, and they got it fixed, but we didn't hit 100 hours that week because of that. Then we had the big snowstorm that came in another week that, we didn't get the machine up and going soon enough to be able to hit 100 hours. And then the next week we had a job shop job come in that we had to stop the machine, and I had to pull all the automation stuff out to run a big part, just one part, and then put everything
Oh
back in.
man,
And so I didn't hit 100 hours that week. So like every week there's been like one or two things that have like stopped the robot. But last week was the closest. We hit 90, almost 93 hours. So
that's so awesome.
I'm
That's really
I'm
cool.
I'm gonna I'm gonna hit 100 hours. It's just hasn't happened yet. But we started the robot yesterday at about 10. So right now I'm sitting at, um let's see here. Um 24 plus, I'm sitting at almost 34 hours right now. So I could hit it this week. So although I actually I know I won't, because I'm gonna have to stop the robot tomorrow because I have a part that has to go on the UMC that can't go on any other machine, and then this large job, with the high volume parts, I'm gonna have to prototype those parts on the UMC because I'm gonna put them on the robot, and I have to do my first articles, and so I'm gonna set everything up for the robot, but it means that it's not gonna be running while I'm doing all my prototyping stuff. So I'm not gonna
Man,
hit it
that's
this week.
so. Are you like trying to get everything done this week so you can like set yourself up to hit it next week?
Yeah. So, well, the timeline we gave them. So these parts have to get outsourced for anodizing, and we have to get first article approval before we can start running production. And so we gave them a timeline for first article, and then we gave them a timeline for starting up production. So I don't have all the material here to run production right now, but I have to get my first articles out the door before Friday, to make them to anodizing so we can get them back so we can do all the inspection to get them the first parts so they can make sure they're happy with them, and then we get the green light, and then it's balls to the walls, try to get them out the door. And I've already told them, like, they had numbers they wanted us to hit, and I already told them that we can't hit those numbers without this other machine. If we're going to get the Datron, it's going to be almost impossible to hit those numbers. it could be possible if I tie up the VF, but then I can't take any more job shop work. And so I'm only I'm going to dedicate 2 machines to this work, not 3, but I have that third one in reserve. If they come back to me and say, "Hey, that's unacceptable. We need more parts," then I can potentially spool that one up.
Man,
So
that's sounds like there's a lot of work to be done this week.
yeah. So, in addition to all the other stuff, because right now I have those 2 parts, which is going to be 35 a year. We've got 2 more parts that are lathe parts that I'm doing first articles on, and those have the potential to be higher volume than the mill parts. Those could be
Wow.
in the neighborhood of 50,000 parts per year for those 2 parts. And so I got to get first articles for those. And then I've got another first article mill part and another first article lathe part. So right now I've got 4 or 5. What's here? 1, 2. I've got 6. I've got 6 right now, first article parts that are all high volume-ish. Well, 4 of them are really high volume. The other 2 are like a couple thousand a year. So we've been kind of getting into the high volume work. It seems like. So
Do you think
I'm okay with this.
Are you intentionally kind of going after that work?
No, it's finding us more than us going out and finding it. So like, I've always wanted the high volume work, but honestly, every customer that's bringing me these high volume, every customer that has brought us high volume work has found us.
Interesting.
And they found us either they were just Googling around. They couldn't find companies to do their prototype parts. And so we were willing to do their prototype parts. And that opened the door for us to ask if they had production quantities and then start getting the production quantities. So we've had that happen. We had a couple where we were doing work for one company and they really liked our work and were telling other people about it. And it traveled several people deep into different states where other people were running into problems, and then they reached out to us. That's how we got our medical customer. Was they're in Florida, and one of our local companies in Arkansas that we're doing parts for, they were bragging about our work to someone, and then that person told someone else, and then that person told someone else, and it traveled down the line playing telephone until it reached Florida, where one of the purchasing people in that department heard about us and they've been struggling. And so that's how we got our medical people. So honestly, I haven't, the customers that I keep getting, I haven't actively searched for since our first major customer. Like the one that allowed us to move into the new building, they were the only one that's like the major customers that we have that I actively went after and tried to become a vendor for. All the others have found us through various means, via website, word of mouth. One of them was the podcast. Just someone who was making parts, a podcast listener who they were unable to make the parts anymore, and so they recommended us. They recommended someone else, and then that person didn't work out, and so they decided to recommend us, and we gave it a shot, and we've been doing them ever since. So like, there's never been a consistent avenue. Every time we get someone, it's been a different way.
Interesting.
But it's been a lot of fun, and
that's pretty cool to hear about that kind of that organic word of mouth growth at that kind of scale. That's pretty neat. That's really cool.
I would say the thing that has given me the biggest advantage to be able to pull this off is I kind of know what type of work and what type of parts I'm trying to get to some extent. And I've kind of built a plan to where if I'm going to grow, I know my next step based on how the company's going. And so I've got my next machine kind of already planned out. And I know, okay, I've got that machine 60% filled already in my head with work that I kind of have seen from other customers. And I go, okay, if I get that one extra one that pushes it over, or maybe it's like 30% filled. Like I know I'm going to need this machine at some point. I've got 30% of its capacity filled. That as soon as I get enough work or someone's has a high enough volume job that they want to try to send me, I can go, okay, I can pull the trigger on that machine and I can get it coming, and I know that I have enough work for it to make its payments, and I have extra capacity to take on more work from more customers. And that's kind
awesome.
of how I've grown, is that the very first machine we bought, the VF3 with the trunnion, I talked to a Haas apps guy who is a really good guy. I really trust him and his opinion. He recommended that machine as a Swiss Army knife, and it has been that hands down. Pretty much any job that I take can fit on that machine. And ever since that machine, that's the work I've kind of tried to go after. And then I buy other machines that are better at doing the work than the VF, but the VF is always the overflow that I can throw it on if I need to.
That makes sense.
That makes sense.
For sure. Yeah.
So like,
yeah,
I get enough work that the VF can't handle it. I buy a machine to move that work off the VF. That opens up that machine again for more job shop work, or a high enough production job comes along. I buy another machine and I keep that VF open.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I have kind of similar thoughts on my next kind of purchase. I mean, right now I've got the vertical mill and the CNC lathe, and those together are very versatile. But man, like 5-axis with like a trunnion setup on a bigger vertical mill, man, that would just be freaking sweet.
Yeah. The only thing that I might have done differently, and I don't know because I don't have experience with it, but I would be tempted to, and it's only because I had my crash on my 5-axis with that big crash with the probe about a year or so ago.
Yeah.
I would be tempted to have, knowing that now, to have gotten the other 5-axis, the one that has the dual columns on either side. It's more rigid, and then if it got bumped or hit, it's less likely to deform or have problems.
Interesting.
Just because it's a tougher unit. So, at least that's just in my head. I have no proof of that. That's what I think. But I have pretty good clearances with the TRT 210. But yeah, it's been a great machine. Honestly, it's had its bumps, and I've thankfully, that's the biggest crash I've really had has been that probe on the 5-axis.
Gotcha.
And all that was because of a freaking old program with the wrong coordinate system in it, because I didn't know what I was doing when I was setting it up.
That sucks.
Yeah. I was running an old program, and yeah. Anyways, let's move on to let's change gears here a minute. Let's talk about Patreons, and then we'll get on to some questions.
Sounds good.
So we have some new Patreons this week. Rodney T is a new Patreon. So Rodney, we thank you. This is kind of our list of our current $10 a month or more Patreons. We have Greg at Farmtown MFG, Jacob S, Chris at CDS Plastics, John S, Alex H, Avery M, Josh at Leighton Machine, Mealy Y, Devin C, Alex at Mill City Roasters, which, by the way, I've finished my first bag of coffee and I'm on my second, and it is also really good. Christian O, Steve M, Horse Pulverizers Incorporated, Daniel R, James at Moultrie Made, Ryan at Strato Manufacturing, Austin W, Kyle at Kirsch Machine, which we have as a guest today, Devin at Sinister Machine Works, James N, Ben at Prickly Pear Prototypes, Cam S, Sheep at Alderson Prototyping, Jacob at Zonum Precision, Jason S, Joshua H, Christian Z, Freaky Climber, Prescott at 1Z2Z Systems, Trey V, Alex B, Scott at Design the Everything, James at JSpec Engineering, Chris at Psych Precision, EJ at Nocturnal Welding, Chris at Thought Bomb Design, and as ever, Jake Bronson. I gotta hand it to AJ doing this every week. That's a long list, dude. It's getting longer.
That's a handful. Mouthful.
That is a handful. Yeah. All right. So, time for some Q&A questions. So, our first question this week is Dylan at Got Chips for Kyle. After going full time, have you seen an increase on RFQs and more work won?
Yes, absolutely. I think I was trying to think back to kind of how I can, what I can attribute that to. And I think the biggest thing I can point to is just the relationships that I've been able to kind of grow with supporting and talking to these guys kind of during the day and during when they're working. I mean, it seems like something that shouldn't really matter. But it does. Talking to these people and responding faster to RFQs, to responding to questions faster. I mean, I do definitely notice a big difference in both the volume of RFQs and the volume of work won. I mean, the other side of that is, when I was in the transition period of going full time, I literally went to all my current customers and said, "Hey, I'm going full time. Do you have any more work or quotes?" So at the same time, I also asked for that additional volume, and I mean that helped a lot too. But I've definitely seen the relationships grow as I can continue to communicate more with these people directly, and I mean I think that's been a huge portion of it.
Yeah. I've definitely also grown work. Like when you build a relationship with a customer, if you do really good work and that customer likes you, you can very easily ask, "Hey, you got more parts?" And if you do good work, odds are they're going to be like, "Oh, you can take more? Here you go."
Yep, for sure.
So, next question from Dylan, for both of us. What are your future plans and expansions, machine purchases?
I can start. I think we, kind of touched a little bit on this in the podcast, but one thing I didn't get into in my talking about is I mentioned I have two buildings on my property. I'm currently in one, about 1,000 square feet of a barn. My other building is actually a pretty good shell base of a shop, but I've got to finish turning that into a legitimate shop. It's a 40 by 80 pole barn with it's got nice concrete floors. It's a 16-foot eaves on the ceiling, a couple of big roll-up doors, but it needs insulation, needs HVAC, needs electrical finished out. So it's got a lot of work to do. So that's actually one of my kind of goals for this year is to kind of finish that space as an actual shop and hopefully get my machines moved in there, and that would kind of prime me for the ability to buy more machines and add more either capacity or capability. Right now in my 1,000 square feet, I'm pretty packed in here. I mean, I've got a little bit of room. I could maybe get a small machine, but I'd really like to get into that building and get a larger machine for some more capability.
Now, both your machines are used. Are you wanting to keep getting used machines, or are you looking at anything new as you continue to grow?
Yeah, it changes day to day. It feels like, I really like my Haas machines, but the things I hear about the new ones, I'm not loving what I'm hearing, but man, there's a lot of benefits to the financing and availability and capabilities and ability to outfit them. I can't answer that question right now. I don't know. I would really like to look at new machines. But at the same time, it's got to be able to support, what I what I want to do with it, and also the budgetary restrictions that I have. I mean, I don't have venture capitalist backed money. I'm working with what I have and trying to grow at the speed of cash, and trying to not take on too much debt, and
Yep.
but also get the capabilities and capacity I need to grow with my customers.
Fair enough. I mean, we've already talked a little bit about some of our future plans. We're planning on building an addition to the shop, and I mean, I've probably got at least my next 3 machines planned out. One of them was not planned, but is now. So the Datron wasn't really on my track of next machines that I'm going to buy, but the job came up and it's the right machine for the job. So if we might be able to do that job on the SVM, and I'm going to have to do it in the beginning. We'll see how that plays out. Um, if it goes really smooth, I might not buy the Datron right away if I don't need to, but I think eventually I will get a Neo for those parts. It's a good chance of that. And then the other 2 machines that I'm kind of considering right now, I'm going to need a Swiss lathe. I can already tell. The dual spindle Y-axis lathe we have right now is awesome, but we're trying to run a lot of Swiss type parts on it, and we're finding its limitations very quickly. And a lot of that is just time. It doesn't have the live tool holders on that machine are, they're limited to 6,000 RPM. And even there, that's 6,000 RPM it's like a 20 or 30% duty cycle on that. So you can't really be running it at that all the time. And then you're constantly worrying about tool holders getting really tight in different areas. And so going to a Swiss style machine, I think things would just be a lot more rigid. We can get a lot tighter stuff to go around it. And we can get, tool holders with a lot more RPMs for some of these tiny tools that we're trying to run. Cause one of the parts we're looking at running, we're going to need to run like a 32nd inch ball mill and do a lot of like, what is it? The flow tool path for radiusing in features. And it's just going to take forever at 6,000 RPM. I really need more RPMs.
Surface feet.
So I really need a lot more RPMs to run some of those parts. For the and it's not a lot of milling, and the part's not very big, but it's just there's so few RPMs that's what's really killing me on that. So I could see a Swiss machine, and then I'm gonna need some small footprint, fast 5-axis, at some point. So like a lot of the parts that the UMC is doing right now, they're aluminum, they're relatively small, and they're high volume. And right now, some of those parts take me about 15 minutes apart. Where if I had like a Speedio style Robo Drill 5-axis machine, I'm sure I could do it in less than 5. And that would be a huge volume and speed increase. But I haven't run into those. I haven't run into a limit with the robot on the machine yet, but I can see that happening if I keep getting parts like these.
It makes
sense. So I will at some point need some sort of a small footprint, high speed 5-axis for those types of parts. Especially if I keep getting them. So that's kind of my 3 machines: Datron, small 5-axis, Swiss.
Sounds like a good combo.
Yeah. So I could have the new edition filled up before it's done. Josh at Leighton Machine. For Kyle, once you went out on your own, did you rely on Zometry work? If so, have you been able to expand your client base beyond this, and how did you do it? We kind of touched base a little bit on this on the podcast, or on the before the questions, but what else you got?
Yeah, I think, I definitely relied on Zometry to kind of do that transition. Like I said, I think that the value of Zometry during that transition was huge for me. I mean, that basically got me to kind of prove to myself that I could, generate the revenue that I needed to support my family, um, uh, by working out in the shop. I mean, my wife doesn't work. I'm the only one who works in my household, so it's relying on me to feed our kids. Um, I you know I used Zometry to kind of prove that to kind of prove to myself and to my family that we could do this, and this is a real path. And it made sense to do that. I mean, that was the biggest value that Zometry had for me. But since I've gone full time, I really have gone away from Zometry, pretty hard. And it's because I haven't needed them. If tomorrow and I don't have work, I mean, I'll gladly go back to Zometry, to fill my hours on the machine and get the pay that we need to survive. But so far that's not the case. I've been very, very successful with my current customers and picking up a couple new ones, that I haven't needed to go back as to use them for filler work.
Have all the customers you picked up known you from in the past, like from your previous jobs, or do you have any customers that are 100% fresh? They've never known you in any past work experience, and they heard about you through either word of mouth, website, or some other networking means, or has everything come from previous connections?
Pretty much everything's come from previous connections and networking. Not even always directly connections, but a past coworker has a friend that is a buyer, or something like that. Not always. Oh, I used to work directly with this person, and now I'm working with them on my own. It's all been kind of network based.
On that network, are you reaching out to people you know and they're networking you, or are other people going, "Hey, I know that that you're on your own now, and someone was asking me about parts, and so I wanted to send them to you." Like,
A
is
little
it
bit of,
you? Is it you pushing or pulling work?
a little bit of both. I'd say when I first was transitioning to full time, I was definitely pulling work. Going out and reaching out and asking questions. Um, I mean, this last new customer I got, literally reached out to me because of some posts I made on LinkedIn, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I remember that guy. He's a good guy. Like I want good guys to be doing work for me and to be successful." And he got in touch with me, and I'm doing work for him right now. So, I mean, I think it can come from a lot of different places, but just having some kind of organic posting on social media, LinkedIn type sites doesn't hurt either.
Good deal. All right, let's go to the next one. Jacob at Sonam Precision. If you were dropped into a new city tomorrow with no contacts, no customers, no parts, just $25,000 to buy some equipment, how would you restart your business with from zero with the knowledge that you currently have?
Man, this is such a tough question. I mean, $25,000 is not much for equipment
Mm-mm.
budget.
No.
Um, so I mean, I'm not even sure. I mean, I would definitely buy a CNC mill of some sort. I would try to hit some auction or marketplace and try to find something for $5,000 or $10,000 and see what I can get that's functional. I mean, but you're also going to have computer. You're going to have Fusion or some software. You've got to have some inspection equipment. You've got to have some deburring tools. I mean, there's just some absolute necessary things that you got to have that, it's tough to fit into a $25,000 budget. And then you've got to have a place to put it all too. You've got to have an air compressor, you've got to have electrical, you've got to have some garage somewhere that, yeah, I don't know. I mean, in terms of like getting customers or getting parts, I mean, if you don't have any contacts in that town, you've got contacts at your old town and parts can ship. So like, I mean, geographically with manufacturing, geographically, we are not tied to a geographic portion. I mean, I would still tap hard into my network to try to fill the capacity on my machine, whatever machine I got. But that's kind of where my mind goes, is screw the geographical restraints, because that's really not an issue with manufacturing. And how the hell am I going to set up a machine shop for 25 grand?
Yeah. So, I mean, no contacts, no customers, no parts. I mean, looking at the heart of your question there, um, I would say it kind of goes to that age old adage, or not, what was the saying? Um, if you're going to go out and chop down trees, sharpen your axe before you go. And so, like, if I was dropped in a new town, the very first thing I would do, if I had zero contacts and knew absolutely nothing, is I'm going to be doing all the research I can on anything that I can think of. I'm going to try to figure out um, where are the business located, what type of industries are in the area, um, where are the best places to network. Um, like, I am going to try to learn this area as much as I can, and then I'm going to I might go knock on um, existing machine shop stores just to go make contacts, because sometimes they might have overflow work. Um, but I'm not going out and spending that $25,000 on a machine until I have a game plan for what type of work I'm going after. Because, a mill is probably your most versatile machine. And if I'm just going out and buying a machine without any research, that's probably what I'm going to go for. But if there's a company that has a ton of lathe work overflow that they need, I might buy a lathe. Um, you got
Yeah,
used
that's fair.
versus new. I mean, like, there's so many questions that come before you go buy your first machine, that need to be answered, that you need to have a game plan with, to make sure you're spending money wisely. It's real easy to go buy a used machine for 25 grand and go, okay, I'm starting. But if you're just buying a machine to get in the door, or to get going without a plan, um, you're going to make it very hard on yourself. And admittedly, that's what I did. And for the first 2.5 to 3 years, it was extremely hard, but I didn't know what I didn't know. And knowing what I know now, I wouldn't just buy a machine. I would first lay all the groundwork I needed to know that when that machine hit the floor, it was going to be used as much as possible.
Yeah, I think that's a
You
really
can't,
good way to look at it. I mean, I kind of go back to the way I started, and I really had no pressure to make money with my machines when I started. That was but I guess if you're if you're got a startup and make this your living from $25,000 with nothing no resources at all. I mean, that sharpening your axe is definitely a great way to look at it.
yeah. And
And if
like you
you've only got
said,
25 grand in a new town with no contacts, you've got time. Like, you're
yeah,
going to have time. So
yeah.
like, use that time effectively. Don't scroll Instagram. Um, you know,
I mean,
get out there and find the work.
if I only have 25 grand, I might go work for someone else at a different machine shop. I might be applying to all the other machine shops to go work for someone else for a while and save that 25 grand in my back pocket until I find an opportunity, that's worth quitting that job and going out on my own. Um,
Well, the thing that could buy you too is even like facilities, or I mean, I've heard of people, opening up in corners of other shops. And if you don't have a place that you can rent, if you end up buying a machine and you have those contacts of other shops, like, it gives that opportunity for collaboration and kind of shared resources. And, if you don't have a relationship with that person, you're never going to have that opportunity.
part of me kind of would have liked to have worked at a machine shop before starting my own. I mean, there is something about starting a machine shop 100% blind, where you don't have preconceived ideas, and so it's a lot easier to think out of the box because you don't even know where the box is located. Um, and so like there can be some advantages to that, but there's a lot of disadvantages, and it's a lot easier to go astray and to fall into a disarray without having, something, some understanding of it on a fundamental level. Um, and so, I mean, if I were to do it over, I would potentially try to find the best shop around and go work for them for a year, not necessarily to like try to poach customers or anything like that, although that would help like get an idea of what's around and make contacts and start building that network. But more than anything else, I mean, in the beginning, we were trying to learn uh, via Zometry. Like that was my teacher, and it was very costly to like I wasn't making a whole lot of money on Zometry in the very beginning. Um, and so to take that learning phase and see if I could get a job somewhere else and um, learn at a cheaper cost with mentors um, would be very valuable. So I'd actually be making money instead of spending it to learn. um, so yeah, I think we've beaten that horse. So we'll move on to the next one.
Sounds good.
Um, and I'm gonna pronounce this wrong. Uh, Actually, I'm gonna see how to pronounce this before I attempt. This is my trick here. Uh, Hurston. Okay. Ryan at Hurston Machine or Hurston Tool. Sorry, Ryan at Hurston Tool. Favorite method for tracking time per job? App, ERP, paper, old fashioned stopwatch. Um, what's the best method?
I I'm not sure what the best method is. I can tell you what I do though. So I basically run my business with a Google Doc. With I have every new PO that comes in. I make a line for every job, every part number, and in that I track dollars that I spend for material. I track dollars I spend for fixturing, for outsourcing, for tooling, for a couple different items, and then I literally have a few columns that I have estimates for hours that I spend on that. So I've got setup program hours, setup hours, and run time per part. Now this is how that typically gets used is just kind of swag, like thumb in the air after I've finished the parts. Like, hey, I think that was a couple hours of setup time, and the runtime was 25 minutes per part. The way I use that is I have a basically the last column in there is dollars per hour estimated for profit on this job, and so I can look back at my kind of history or when that job repeats and say, oh, this is a really good job, or I can leave myself notes in there that says the setup time, this took me 2 days because of this unforeseen thing. Do it this way, and your hourly rate will be significantly better next time, and turn the job into from a failure into a winner. So that's the way I track it. I do not think that that's best practice, but that's kind of how I do it today, is just a kind of a swag. After I get done with the parts, I go in and fill that kind of line of my spreadsheet out, and that results in ultimately an hourly rate that I obtained during running those parts.
So I don't really have a favorite method either. I will say that I've done just about everything. We have Pro Shop, and so I've tracked in Pro Shop. I've looked at, you know, I've programmed the parts, and then I usually just estimate my time based off of how long it took me to do that. But when I'm running my parts, I'll use Fusion's times that it spits out, and I'll know that in general, it's not going to be any quicker than that. It's probably going to be 15 to 20% longer. So that gives me pretty good numbers. Um, and then I've also used a stopwatch in the past to track, hey, how long does it actually take to load this part, run it, and like what's my what's my time my tack time from cycle start to cycle start. Um, and I will say that, when you're doing stuff like that, you're running, I'm not going to do the cycle start to cycle start if I'm doing a one or two parts. And so like, I'd say that the way you track your job is also going to kind of depend on the type of work you're doing. Is it high volume? Is it one part? Is it 10, 100, 1,000? Each one of those, you're going to have a different one. If I'm doing a one-off, um, it's going to be expensive no matter what. Like I just need to get in the ballpark. If I'm doing 10, I might try to make sure my times are a little closer. I might pay a little bit more attention. If I'm doing 100, then yeah, I'm gonna try to dial that in. I'm gonna track it a lot closer. And then when I get to 1,000, man, I'm getting that stopwatch out, and I'm knowing what from cycle start to cycle start. What is my time? Because it matters. But like, as your quantity goes down, the way you time track becomes like, in the grand scheme of things, more generalized because it's just going to take a lot of time. And so like, you just got to value your time at that point. If I work for I might look at it and go, okay, well, it's been a day. I've made 4 parts, so each of those parts is going to be $500 or
Yep.
$600 just because that's how much time it took me to make 4 parts today. And I might look at that and I might go, this part took me a quarter of the time. This part took me 5 minutes. This part took me half the time. So you might divvy up that time, but in general, I know hey, when I'm working and I'm spending a day, however many parts I make in that day, my goal is to hit this much revenue generated per person. So that part's going to cost me roughly that much because it took me that much time of my day to do it.
Yep.
But
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I'm very similar to that. I mean, most of my quantities are on that lower end scale. I mean, today I literally made finished 8 parts today.
I lost you.
You there?
Hello? Oh, there you are.
Okay. I could hear you the whole time. So
you just started talking to me. So start at the beginning.
yeah, so I'm definitely on the lower end of those parts. I mean, I made 8 parts today. That's what I finished 8 parts. I had another some parts that I made on the op one on the lathe that I finished. But I think that was 12 pieces. So I'm definitely on the lower end of the part scale. So for me, I can look back over the kind of over the day and over the few hours I spent on that project and say, yeah, that to do that, yeah, it was to make those 8 parts was 4 hours. I'm making enough on those 8 parts to have a good hourly rate. Like that's as good as I need at this point.
Yeah. So, all right. I think this is our last question. Trevor at Jacob Dynamics, or Jacob's Dynamic. When did you know it was quote unquote safe to leave your day job and go full time with your business? Were you making enough to support yourself, or was was the day job just getting in the way of the growth of your business?
Yeah, so I think we've touched on this a little bit already, but with the kind of the work that I was doing on nights and weekends during that transition period, really that like kind of 6 or 8 months of transition time is really kind of what it was. At the end of that, I'd say probably for the 4 months at the end of that kind of transition time, I was making enough to support myself and the family on the side business that I was making. The benefit of that, because I still had a day job, is I, basically made a big runway of cash for myself. And so between stringing a few months together of, making enough money to that it would support our family and having that cash built up in the business, I felt pretty safe, going and calling it quits. But I wouldn't say that the day job was getting in the way of growing my business. I was not, burning the midnight oil every night, working 8 hours in the shop every night. It was not that, I was trying to get higher value work, lower hour, higher value work. And that's still where I position myself today. Where it really was just, proving to myself that this kind of business model could fund our, our life and our household. And then using that as building up that kind of cash runway to support, any bumps in the road.
Yeah. I've talked about my growth on the podcast, but I'll just briefly touch on it for those who haven't heard it. Don't do what I did for starters. I quit my job cold turkey. I knew nothing about machining and I had zero contacts. So this was literally, and I started with basically $25,000. So this is Jacob's question. The only thing that's missing from Jacob's question about what I did was that I had saved up 6 months to a year of savings before I quit my job. And my first year, my take home was $3,000 for both me and Weston. We each brought home $3,000 my first year, and we were basically living off savings. We got down to the wire to the point where we almost had to like quit and go find other jobs, and that's when we got our first big customer, and that brought us back around. But that first year, we built our parachute on the way down. Like 100% is what we did. We had no machining experience. Like I'm teaching myself fusion. Like the only thing that happened was like the week I quit my job, like the next week I found out that I had like passed the Zometry part and became a Zometry partner. Like I didn't even have that. Like, it was, do not recommend, but it's been one heck of a ride.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, it's funny because looking back, when at the time I was so ignorant and gun ho and just full of can do attitude that like nothing was going to stop me. And in a way, I kind of manifested it just by sheer positivity and determination. And like the ignorance to not realize how scared I should have been. like that's about the only thing I can describe. And I will say that, and I don't know if I think I've mentioned this on the podcast, but I'll say it again. What kicked my butt in gear and why I did this is that I got married. I had a girlfriend. I asked her to marry me. She said yes. And I saw in that moment a flash of, I'm going to get married. Eventually I'm going to have kids. And I really want to start a business at some point. And I knew in that moment that if I didn't start something right now, it was probably going to be 10 to 20 years down the line, because if I got married and started popping out kids and didn't have a business going at that point, it was going to be extremely difficult for that for me to get a business going if I was trying to raise a family at the same time. And it'd be a lot scarier to do that. And so I knew the beginning was going to be rough. I didn't know how rough, but I knew it was going to be rough. And so I was like, I need to make this jump now. I have enough savings to survive a year. If it fails and I have to go back working for someone else, I will at least know that I won't have a regret later on in my life, working for someone else as an engineer, 20 years down the line and going, man, I really wanted to start my own business, but I got married, I started having kids, and I just didn't feel comfortable quitting my job. And I've heard that story so many times from so many different people that I was like, no, I'm going to risk it for the biscuit, and let's see where this goes. So I jumped in full force and full of ignorance.
Sometimes ignorance is bliss, right?
Oh yeah. And I do not regret it in the slightest. Had I, part of me looks at it and goes, man, if I knew now, if I knew then what I know now, how would I do it? But part of me also goes, if I knew now what if I knew then what I knew now, I might not have done it. I might have been too scared. I might have looked at all that work and all the late nights and all the stress and gone, it's not worth it. And so that pure ignorance and excitement is what drove me in the beginning, because it wasn't money, because I didn't have any. I was on a wing and a prayer. But it's been fun. It's been real fun. And having Weston there through all of this, that's the other thing, is it wasn't just me on a wing and a prayer, it was Weston too. And that doubles the ante, but it also doubles the support. And so having him stick through this with me, and he had a much harder time than I did, because he also got married. We got married within 3 months of each other. And the only difference is that in that early time, Weston got married, he built a house, and he had a kid, and he was living off savings. So he did all the stuff that I was worried about. But he did it. He thankfully he had a wife who has a good job that was able to help out. And mine was still in school. So, but yeah, no, it was, for both of us, it was a lot. And so I can't tell you when I knew it was safe, because I didn't. I just did it. They're safe was hitting your head on the ground after jumping out of a plane. Like, that was going to be my safety, was hitting the ground and pulling myself back together and finding a job for someone else. And they can ask, what's with this 1.5 year gap in your resume? That's where I was trying to find myself. It didn't work.
It didn't work, and that's why I'm here. But it did work, and that's why you're
here. Yep. So, I'm definitely a little bit more of an odd duck, I think, in how our story's been. I think there's more people that like have started this up as a side gig in their garage, and then they get big enough to where they're comfortable quitting their jobs. I'd probably recommend that route.
Yeah, so, I would too. So far, it's working out for me.
Well, do you have any questions or anything that you'd like to ask me while we're here?
No, I don't think so.
You don't think so? How long have you been listening to the podcast?
I found this podcast, I believe, in late 2024.
Okay.
And I joined the Patreon, I think, as a free tier, or maybe at the I can't remember. I joined it enough to get onto the Discord, onto the Discord server. And then funny story is actually how I became a higher level Patreon was in that Discord server. AJ posted a Zometry job that actually was perfect for my laser cutter for my CO2 laser. And it was a laser job that was like misclassified on Zometry as a CNC machining job. It was a CO2 laser for making like identification tags, like you'd see on an electrical panel or something like that. But it's this material that's like a dual layer engraving material. You engrave away the top layer to expose the different color on the bottom of it, and that's how you get your contrast for your engraving. Anyways, they had posted this job for I think like $1,800, and the material on this was $50, like no material cost, and the time was like 20 minutes of laser engraving time. So I literally made, thousands of dollars an hour on this for this one job. So I figured that I could go up to the full tier and support you guys 100% as a paid Patreon member. because I got and that job actually repeated too. So I got it again as well. So that was a good one from AJ.
Nice. What would you say? Let's see here. What's a good way to word this? What do you enjoy the most about our podcast, and what do you think, as a podcast, we need to improve the most?
Oh man, that's a really good question. I'd say what I appreciate the most about your guys' podcast is I really like. I mean, you guys are two definitely very different business owners, and I feel like that plays really well into your discussions with each other, because you've got kind of AJ who's kind of focused on system building and not really focused on the day-to-day like manufacturing side anymore.
Mm-hmm.
At least that's the way it seems. Like I know he still does some of that, but it really is kind of focused towards how he's building Subtract and myself as a Subtract vendor. I'm also really interested in that because I like knowing what's going on behind the scenes in the companies I'm supporting. And then with you, I mean, yeah, it just seems like all the opportunity you get, it's incredible. The high volumes. I mean, I just love hearing about how you're growing and new machines. And I think like, I kind of look to that as almost aspirational. I mean, I want to, get to those, bigger machines and automation like you've been able to implement. And kind of seeing it being done in real time is really cool to follow along.
Thank you.
In terms of what to change to improve, I don't know.
Or maybe not to improve, but like, is there any, I don't know, topics, questions? Is there something we could incorporate into our episodes that like would be, a unique, or a good addition? Like, we got our questions, we kind of got our rambling all over the place. Is there like something either not related to machining or, a question that would be good to like circle back to every week? Like, is there anything that we could add?
Well, you guys are pretty consistent. I mean, you're pretty consistent in your topics, and then with the kind of the questions from Discord, it kind of adds that extra little bit of flavor. And I mean, I think the thing that comes to mind for me is like, I'm in my shop, solo, like, one man show, right? So that's probably the biggest thing I've missed with like leaving a corporate job or a bigger job is the like camaraderie of having, coworkers and, water cooler conversations and side of the desk type conversations. You don't get that when you're alone in your own shop. The Discord has kind of definitely helped to fill that role for me, especially with the Friday hangouts. I would say the best thing you guys could do to improve that is show up on the Friday hangouts, you and AJ.
Yeah, I need to do that. What about like, do you think we need to have more guests on, or like, do you enjoy the guest podcast, or do you like just me and AJ, or is there any particular podcast episodes we've done in the past that you'd like to see more of?
I don't know. I like listening to you and AJ. I mean, I do like that. I do think that when you guys have guests on, you're very, very good and very, good at kind of getting the story. I mean, I think we had I think you did a very good job of kind of letting me tell my story and probing along the way to kind of get some extra detail. And so I do really appreciate that from when you guys have guests on, like Ethan. I really enjoyed that episode with Ethan. That was really cool to hear some more about his backstory and, young guy coming into manufacturing and kind of trying to, not, kind of playing that expert in the room role, even though he's, not really doing that or not, definitely doesn't have the attitude, but he still really is playing that role as a consultant. And I mean, it was really interesting to hear about kind of his perspective and his take on that situation.
Fair enough. Well, good. Well, I'm glad to hear it. I'm glad for the feedback. Thank you. I know I kind of put you on the spot with those questions, but I ask those questions because I am genuinely curious. I'm very bad about going into the Discord and catching up with all the Patreons. I need to do it more. But it seems like I wake up in the morning, I work all day, and then I go home and I go to bed, and I don't have very much time in between to like get on the Discord and catch up with people. So anytime I have the opportunity to talk to someone one-on-one, I really like to get some of that feedback because I'm very bad about going and getting it on my own. So I will try to. I've been invited to those Friday night. What time do you guys do those at?
I think it's at 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning on Pacific time.
And then it just kind of runs. It just runs like the whole day, or does it kind of just depend on?
I usually log off around lunchtime, and then I think there's some people that are still on, in the end of the afternoon too.
Well, it's just going to be me and Ben this week, so there's a good chance I could pop on because I won't have Weston or anyone else around. So we'll see. I won't make promises, but I will try to set a reminder on my phone to try to do that.
Right on.
So as we're getting ready to head out here, why don't you give me some of your plugs, your social? Do you have a website? If someone listening to this podcast goes, man, that Kyle guy, he sounds awesome, I want to send him work. How do they do that?
So I've got a website, kirschmachine.com. My last name's KIRSCH. So it's KIRSCH machine.com. Instagram at Kirsch Machine, or LinkedIn. I think my business is a LinkedIn, but I usually post on my personal Kyle Kirsch. So that's probably my three main ways to get in touch.
Fair enough. Well, we've reached the end of the podcast where it's time to say goodbye. And this has been Harrison. And I want to thank our guest, Kyle at Kirsch Machine, for hanging out with us. We'll catch you guys later. Please like, subscribe, and share. Tell all your friends and your neighbors, and then maybe your neighbors will tell neighbors, and then those neighbors will tell other neighbors. Unless you live in the country, in which case you might have to send a homing pigeon to your neighbor. We'll catch you guys later.
All right, take care.
One of a kind.